This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We have actual football games that matter to discuss this week. Week 0 is finally here for college football. We're going to break down what Ed's model says about those games, what goes into Ed's model, and get you set for our first weekend of actual real games of 2022. It is a great day to be talking to all of you. Welcome on into Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here once again, as always, by my Wednesday co-host, Dr. Ed Feng. You can find his work over at thepowerrank.com. Ed, we got games coming up this weekend on Saturday. I'm ecstatic. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to have some games, although kind of overwhelmed with all the things that need to be done before then. But yeah, we're going to roll whether I'm ready or not. So here we go.
We absolutely are. And we're going to break down what goes into the numbers you're looking at. We're going to break down your favorite bets this week. We'll break down some of the key games. There aren't really any big games this week, but who cares? It's college football.
Can't complain about. Got the game of the season.
The game of the century, Ed. Let's not
game
sell
of
it
the
short.
Century. Your hat denotes a team playing in this game of the century.
I mean, it's NU versus NU, the battle of NU, the University of Nebraska Lincoln, which is not NU, by the way, versus Northwestern University, which actually is NU, out in Dublin, Ireland. I'll be there on Saturday. I am flying out today on Wednesday. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. I saw that there is a Northwestern bar set up in Dublin somewhere, so we're going to have a blast. We're going to watch some college football in person. I will now have seen Northwestern play in Evanston, obviously, a couple Big Ten places, but then Jacksonville, Nashville, and we'll add Dublin to the list. And those are very random places, it feels like, to see a Northwestern football team play.
Well, I mean, it's got to be a fun venue, a fun trip. I'm glad you're going to get a chance to get away before everything goes crazy with the NFL soon.
Yeah, that's the issue here. Is I had a bachelor party last weekend, got Dublin this weekend, FanDuel event in Chicago coming up for week 1 of NFL. Then I have a wedding in Denver in week 3. So whole lot of travel, not a lot of rest, but we'll dive on in and break down that NU versus NU game and much more in just 1 second. But first, NFL kickoff is still a few weeks away, but you can get on the action now on FanDuel Sportsbook with their NFL Super Win bonus. Right now, anyone who places at least a $50 Super Bowl winner bet will get $5 back for each win your team has during the regular season. There are also a ton of other futures markets available, like team win totals, division winners, player props, and so much more. There is no better place to get ready for the football season than on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states only. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Max free bet $50. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WIN-IT. In Louisiana, 1-877-770-STOP. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Tennessee, call the Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. In Wyoming, 1-800-522-4700. In West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Also, regarding the podcast for the next couple of days, Tom Vecchia will have you covered Thursday and Friday. Tom filled in for me last week on Friday to get you set, talk some MLB and some NFL. Tom back with you Thursday, Friday. So still having daily shows here on Covering the Spread. And I'll be back with you on Monday, fresh off the plane, to break down more MLB next Monday as well. So get all those by subscribing to the Covering the Spread podcast feed. Let's dive in now to this week 0 slate, Ed. We'll talk about the actual games in a second. But first, we were talking last week on our win total show about what goes into your win total model and the complexities of that. But now we're talking about actual games. So when we're talking about your actual in-game model, what are the key data that you lean on to try to predict how a single game will go?
We're in the preseason right now, so it'll change in the regular season, but we're looking at preseason metrics, and all of that is based on one of two things. It's based on data from past seasons, and teams tend to persist in college football. So I use 4 years, for example, to look at how a team has performed. And so data is one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it, and actually probably what's unique to what I do at the Power Rank, is that I use market win totals. And I have code that backs out the rating for every team, given the price to go over and under a specific win total. And then, of course, your schedule. So, 7.5 wins means something different in the SEC West than it does in the Sun Belt. So, there's some code that does that. I've found that to be a very powerful predictor. Over the past, I found it to be, the point spreads you get out of that to be very good at predicting what's going on in the future and for week 1. And you combine that with some other metrics you trust as well. And those are the member numbers that I will talk about today.
And how much does it change as you get actual in-season data? Like, is it a blending of 2 separate models that spits out, like once we get to like week 3, how does it kind of integrate as we actually get real game data here?
Well, by week 3, actually after this week, so after this week, it'll start adjusting based on data from the current season. Mm-hmm. And you'll see those adjustments for the teams. A couple years ago, I started making some way more aggressive adjustments in college football because that is what I feel is needed to really capture how these teams change. It is also what some of the pros that I've talked to think that is the right approach for college football. So don't be surprised if you see, a team that, maybe looks kind of terrible. We'll talk about Georgia Tech in a little bit, but that is a team that is kind of on its last legs, maybe with a coach entering his 4th year. And if they put a real stinker out there on against Clemson, you could see, and whoever they're playing in the first couple of weeks, you could see some drastic adjustments there. Clemson is another team that can move. Well, Clemson is actually the perfect example of a team that you had to move on pretty quick last year because the offense just stunk and actually never ended up getting better over the course of the season. The defense was still pretty good, but my model wasn't quite aggressive enough to capture Clemson last year. I think I did not end up overall profitable betting on Clemson last year, even though that's what my model said, and with the belief that, look, this is one of the preeminent programs in college football. So it's always, you have to put some objective analysis over the model as well. Sometimes you're going to be able to catch teams, sometimes you're not. And that's kind of the art of betting.
Yeah. For me, I've always found a blend of having a model to tell me spots I want to look at and then using subjectivity to decide, do I agree, has been the biggest successes that I've had, has been a blend of that too. And I think that's kind of along with what you're saying there as well. So let's talk about some week 0 games here. Again, not the best, most robust slate, but we'll start things off with the headliner over in Dublin. It is Nebraska versus Northwestern right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Nebraska, 13.5-point favorite. Total here is 50.5. So Ed, I have spent 2 of the past 3 years watching a hideous product on the field for Northwestern. Looks like Ryan Helinski has probably won the quarterback 1 job based on his Instagram. I know that's very, very official, very informative. Coach Fitz refuses to say who will be starting at quarterback, but simple question, do my Cats have a chance here?
Oh, for sure. Maybe to cover in particular. It seems like this line's getting out of control a little bit. So these are 2 interesting teams in the sense that you need to ask how much are they going to regress to kind of their program mean. I don't even know if Nebraska has a program mean anymore. They've been significantly underperforming throughout the Scott Frost era. You can quantify that a little bit. They were 0-7 in 1-score games last season. I also believe they lost to Ohio State by 9, which is pretty good given how good Ohio State was. So it was you're not supposed to go 0-7 in 1-score games. You strongly expect things to regress to 500 there. So they shouldn't be 3-9 again. Markets have win totals at about 7.5 for Nebraska. I honestly think that's a little bit high based on some of the models that I looked at. They have things a little bit lower for Nebraska. And, now that I'm talking about it and thinking about it, it's like, well, where is that program mean? It hasn't really been. It's been a long time since they were a preeminent program, and they've gone through a lot of coaches and had to figure things out. They, they got quarterback Casey Thompson from Texas in the transfer portal I don't know if anyone's convinced that he's necessarily the answer. They're resorting to a lot of other transfers to get this program to the next level. That's what you have to do when you're Scott Frost and really on the hot seat to really turn this program around. I mean, 3 wins again this season is not going to do it. Now, they should win more than 3 games, but the question is how many. They're probably going to get this first one against Northwestern. I have this game at a neutral site, and I have Nebraska by 11, and that's about a 79% win probability. So your Wildcats are not favored, but 1-5. They could potentially pull the victory here. And, with Northwestern, they've been, last year they were significantly below what their program mean is. And we kind of know what the program mean is for Pat Fitzgerald, right? It's somewhere between 25 and 60, in FBS. And that's just where he is. And sometimes you win a lot of close games and you go 10-2 and win a bowl game. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Last year was an outlier because they were really bad on both sides of the ball. The program's traditionally been really good on defense. You lose a legendary coordinator and you're kind of starting over and you're trying to figure things out on that side of the ball. The offense, it's kind of stunk for a while. And I don't know. I mean, it should get better. I mean, Northwestern should be somewhere between the 25th and 60th best team in the country. That's not where they project right now, but it's the same, it's the same head coach and he's done it before. And you should get back to that program mean. If that's anywhere near the case, then I do think there's a little bit of value in Northwestern plus, what'd you tell me the number was?
13.5. Yeah.
13.5. 13.5 seems like a lot
yeah.
for a Nebraska program that I'm not sure anyone who thinks deeply about college football really trusts.
Yeah. I think last year, part of it was the quarterback situation, which is not better this year. Cause again, Ryan Helinski is probably the starter and he's the same guy who was in there for a lot of last year, but also they were replacing Rashawn Slater, who did miss the 2020 season too, because he opted out due to COVID. Greg Newsom was gone. They had a lot of guys they had to, replace, and they didn't do that well, obviously, but they've had some seasoning on these guys now. It was a decently young team. So 13.5 is a big number. And I'm glad your numbers say there's value there. It gives me a little hope as I get on the flight, but we'll see how that one plays out over in Dublin between Nebraska and Northwestern. So Ed's numbers do like Northwestern, potentially plus 13.5 in this one. Let's stick in the Big Ten and talk about Illinois. Illinois now a 10.5-point favorite against Wyoming. This game is in Urbana-Champaign, I believe. Total is 43.5. And we were talking about Illinois last week on the show, and you said you like the win total under for Illinois. So we're looking at an individual game now versus Wyoming. What are your numbers saying about the Illini here?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the market go away from my number again. I have Illinois by 9.3 points. I just think it's going to be it's going to be a step back year for Brett Bielema before maybe he gets this program back to where, until he gets the program better. They lost a ton of production on both sides of the ball. They lost a quarterback who wasn't particularly good, and it's probably going to be a little bit of a reset. So I do believe in that. I'm not exactly too excited about betting on Wyoming in this situation. They've been decent on the defensive side of the ball with Craig Bowl, but not so much on offense, and I'm not necessarily convinced that they're going to do it as well. So I'm probably staying away from this, but in general, I do think I'm looking to fade Illinois this early in the season.
Now, with both these first two games, we've seen spreads that were more ambitious than what your numbers said. And I'm inclined to go with your numbers early in the season because there's a lot more variance. There's a lot more volatility, which typically, when you have a wider spread, it implies certainty. It implies we kind of know what we're dealing with. Do you feel the same way, an inclination towards, not laying a massive, massive number when there is this much uncertainty, especially with programs like Illinois and Nebraska, that it's hard to, in a vacuum, see them covering massive, massive spreads from the get-go?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think some of these spreads are a little bit high. I have never quantified this, but I personally do think there's a difference between NFL and college football. College football, the markets seem to be a little bit happier to acknowledge that a team is going to be particularly good. I feel like the NFL spreads are very cautious. Those first couple of weeks in the season, you tend to see small numbers. the markets are essentially assuming regression to the mean, right? Like you're not going to give any team credit for being particularly good. And it's only after you see teams just stink it up for a couple weeks in a row when you start seeing those double-digit spreads, and then you can start fading that. I don't feel like that's a particularly good strategy in the NFL in the first couple weeks. Probably a little bit more so in college because I do feel, again, I haven't quantified this, but I do feel like the markets tend to give the favorites a little bit more of an edge.
Yeah. I think that is interesting, especially with the way we've seen things move for these first two games, but also for this third game. So let's go now to Hawaii. I'm going to Dublin. I wouldn't mind going to Hawaii instead. So if Northwestern wants to play, I guess, USC in Hawaii in a couple years, sign me up. I'll go to that. But we got Vandy at Hawaii. Right now, Vandy, 8.5-point favorite. This was 6.5 Tuesday morning. It is now 8.5. Again, a lot of points. Total here is 54.5. Typically, though, Ed, we're seeing Vandy against tougher competition. Hawaii, not quite in that realm. How does this Vanderbilt team compare to Hawaii in Hawaii for this week?
Yeah, so this is a game that I don't kind of understand quantitatively. So my numbers have this almost a pick. And I don't know. I'm not sure Vandy should be an 8-point favorite against anybody in FBS anywhere. This is a program that hasn't really done well. Clark Lea is in his second year on the job, and he's got a lot of work to do. But, the counter argument is like Hawaii's kind of starting over in some sense. They brought in Timmy Chang. Todd Graham was fired over some allegations of player abuse, and they lost a lot of their key players to the transfer portal. And I think they're going to start that Trigger guy at quarterback who was like this complete wild gunslinger last year. So that should be kind of interesting as well. And it's tough to know exactly what to expect with Hawaii. I think, Vandy's probably going to have a talent edge being the SEC program. I'm pretty sure my numbers that say this is close to a pick is not right. But, is there some value with Hawaii? Probably being at home in this spot. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty there.
Yeah. And again, it just sounds like when there's uncertainty, it's okay to, be skeptical of a large spread with regards to Vandy here. So we're liking Northwestern plus 13.5, liking but not betting necessarily. Wyoming plus 10.5, and then into Hawaii plus 8.5 versus Vanderbilt for this week. But Ed, we got a lot of other games on the board for this week too. Not the most robust slate, but there are still some other games. Any other numbers standing out to you as presenting some value for this week?
I want to talk about a week one game, and I want to talk about Clemson and Georgia Tech at a neutral site. So Clemson is a team whose offense stunk last year, but again, it's been one of the preeminent programs, right? I mean, we expect the offense maybe not to be elite, but to get back closer to the program mean, which has been pretty good. I mean, I guess it's always going to be pretty good when you have Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence at the quarterback position. I think they're going to get better. They're not going to stink like that. They have an amazing defense. That really isn't going to change. And Georgia Tech is kind of not a really good football program right now. Lost a ton of production from last year. Going to be relying on some transfers, just not coach on the hot seat, just a program that could fall even further from where it's become. And so anyways, the market is Clemson minus 21.5. My numbers are even more bullish. I have Clemson by almost 24. I do think there's some value there. I think that gets away from Georgia Tech pretty early.
Yeah, that game is at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, so in Atlanta for that week. You have that as the neutral site game, as you mentioned. So 21.5, the spread in favor of Clemson there. Ed is going to lay that for week one. I would advise, with these week zero games, we saw a lot of movement today, yesterday, Tuesday. And if you like week one numbers, get them now, because we're seeing movement still, despite the fact that these games have been posted for a very long time. We are still seeing movement. So if you like Clemson minus 21.5, you agree with that there. Or if you like any other week one games, I would get them now because we will see some movement early in the week, despite the fact these numbers have been up for a very long time. So if you like Clemson minus 21.5 out in Atlanta, I would grab that one as well. That is all that we have here for this week on covering the spread. But Ed, delight to talk to you again. Delight to talk to you about some actual games for here as well. If people want to find your numbers, whether it be the public-facing ones or signing up for your member numbers, where can they do so for that?
It's all at thepowerrank.com. It's my site for better sports betting through predictive analytics. And I do truly believe that predictive analytics is a crucial component of football betting. So if you want to just check it out, I would recommend signing up for the newsletter. This is I write about games that I bet. And then we also have 7 Nuggets Saturday, which is a curated list of sports betting tips and news. So you can check that out at thepowerrank.com. And then also, I just put up an article today about the craft of sports betting professionals. So this was a project that I did over the off season, just trying to figure out what the process is of some top pros, and listened to a lot of podcasts and wrote that up. So that's something you can check it. It's pinned to my Twitter feed at the Power Rank. If you're interested at all in how this all works, you should look to what the pros are doing, and I try to make it easy for you. With the craft of sports betting professionals.
And I would say, especially if you're someone who is new to this, given that we've had a lot of states legalized since last college football season, if you're new to this, learn from the pros, learn what they do, learn those best practices, learn what they're looking for, stuff like that. Now's the time to soak up as much information as possible. So finding an aggregated source for all that stuff that Ed has compiled for you, especially helpful there. So find that. Ed said it's on his Twitter at the Power Rank to find that. Football Analytics Show is Ed's podcast, and also thepowerrank.com to get all of Ed's numbers. I'm on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Once again, Tom Vecchio with you for the next couple of days, Thursday and Friday, to get you into your weekend. I'll be back with you on Monday to recap what went down for you this week in week 0 of college football. Good luck to you with your bets. We'll talk to you once again soon. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.